Killer Mike.
Mm.
He sat down for a discussion with Robert Kennedy, who is an anti-vaxxer
Mm.
who's running. Is he still running for president? I don't know.
I think yeah, he is. He was running the ad at Super Bowl and everything, Chad.
Oh yeah, that's true. He did. And Killer Mike, they got into an interesting discussion about the black family, about marriage, about poverty, about teenage pregnancy. And Killer Mike had some suggestions. Listen to this.
Pregnant as a teenager, young man and woman get pregnant, this is the 2-year plan. First 2 years are debt free. You don't have to pay the government anything back. So she doesn't get to drag him into court and the court doesn't say, you owe us money for investing in your child through food programs, through early Head Start programs. Because in those 2 years, the boy has the option, or not even the option, he has the demand of the co-man to then go to a trade school. You have to go to a trade school, which incentivizes the United States to do it because we need more tradespeople. We don't have enough carpenters, we don't have enough electricians, we don't have enough people building roads. In my community, the girls are going to college and graduating. They have no men to marry because the boys are not going to college in the same way. My teachers were married to a tradesman. My teacher, who we call doctor, her husband owned a locksmith company. Her husband was a carpenter, was a mechanic. So they had a good life. Their kids went to school right the same schools we went to. I think that the incentive to solving the child support problem and a part of solving our infrastructure problem is to incentivize young boys who have gotten a girl pregnant. You must now go through 2 years of trade school.
Oh, wait a minute. So, okay, I like what you're saying.
Let me give you the rest of the answer first.
Okay, go ahead.
After that boy graduates, you get a further incentive if you and the girl marry. If you and the girl marry, we'll give you these incentives: zero finance home loans, something out of HUD besides an apartment with a leaky faucet and rats and roaches in it, but incentivize marriage, which then strengthens our community, the black community, and strengthens the greater community, because now you have more American marriages, you have people with stronger financial stability, and you have tradespeople married to women of education, and you begin to recreate communities like what Auburn Avenue was, what Edgewood was. I believe you can do this from the executive order, because the money that funnels down from the feds through the states to help mothers, then it can be attached. Well, we're not only helping mothers, we're helping fathers too. If a boy gets a woman pregnant, not only does she receive TANF, I see your face, right? Good idea. If a woman receives TANF, she receives this, the boy now has a must. You're federally required now to go to trade school.
What the are you talking about? What was that? What?
Couple of key things here. And I've said, and he sounds like Ann Coulter, but with more words. Ann Coulter was basically saying a version of this
Yeah.
on Bill
Yeah.
Maher. You cannot marry yourself out of poverty. You
There's that.
cannot marry yourself out of poverty. You cannot marry yourself out of poverty. There are always exceptions. Anna Nicole Smith did it. Whatever.
Well, yeah. Yeah.
That's it.
You can marry rich.
You cannot marry yourself out of poverty. This idea that if more people got married, there would be less poverty and it would solve the ills of our community is just factually not true. That's a conservative talking point.
Mm-hmm.
And in the same breath, they will cut a free school lunch program for kids.
Right.
In the same breath, they'll cut arts programs, right? You cannot marry yourself out of poverty. And the other thing that I'm all about marriage. If you want to get married, do it, go for it. That's beautiful. But normally, two poor people marry each other. That's what happens.
Yeah, exactly.
If you don't have fair wages, if you have a $7.25 minimum wage, if you have discrimination in the workforce, you cannot marry yourself out of poverty. You cannot marry yourself out of racism. That's not going to happen. But this other idea, this romanticizing of how things were 60 years ago or 50 years ago when marriages stayed together, we had stronger communities back then, that's a Jim Crow lie.
Yeah.
Just because a woman was forced to stay in a marriage in the 1960s, 50s, or 40s does not mean we had a stronger community. A single woman couldn't get a credit card until 1971. 1971. It wasn't until 1973 that all 50 states passed legislation that women could serve on federal juries. There was barely any child abuse laws in the 1960s. There was barely any rape laws in the 1960s. And the idea that you're going to force a guy, well, he said a boy marrying a woman. That was kind of weird.
It was boys and women, but we're talking about teenagers here.
And this is somebody who's considered one of the political mavericks.
Oh, my God.
Allegedly. But my father was 19 when my mother was pregnant. My mother was 18. Thank God they didn't get married, Reese. I probably would have had some severe mental health issues.
Right.
Because my father and mother did not get along. They're young people making mistakes. So this idea that if we just force them into marriage, it's gonna help. I mean, this has been proven time and time again that you should not force yourself into marriage just because somebody is pregnant. This has been proven. This is a horrible thing to do.
Yeah.
It's just so offensive versus talking about and I'm not saying Killer Mike never talks about that, but the real issues of how there is no economic infrastructure for poverty. And, granted, if you have a 2-person income, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Because you're married does not mean you're going to have a 2-person income.
There is also that, yes.
So it's just very, the idea of you have to go to trade school, it'll be an executive order. Like, people are forgetting the nuances and complexities. Well, first of all, just civics alone, but the nuance and complexities of relationships. There were plenty, actually, the poverty rate was higher in the 1950s for black communities and 60s. The booming black middle class, I cover this in The Grift, my book, happens in the 1970s.
Yeah.
This is in the Nixon chapter, the chapter about black capitalism. And one of the critiques of that is that it forgot the black poor.
Yeah.
So this is just so silly to me. Again, I'm all about marriage. Beautiful. If you want to get married, do it. But the idea that marriage is going to make you economically, it's going to pull you out of the depths of poverty. And then the idea of you shouldn't be able to drag a guy in for court, into court, if he isn't paying child support or isn't supporting, that's kind of crazy. What if this is a domestic violence? I mean, this is crazy to even consider a federal law on teenagers or people in their early 20s. But then there's the whole misogyny angle too. Reese, go for it.
I am flabbergasted by the ability to pack in so many horrible fucking ideas into 2 minutes that show a complete detachment to even what makes sense policy-wise, what's feasible. Executive order? By executive order, you're going to have 0% financing for what? Mortgages? I didn't even know what he was saying 0% financing for. By executive order, you can decree these things? What in the fucking Handmaid's Tale is he even talking about? This is like a hood Handmaid's Tale. I don't think anybody wants to live in that motherfucking version of our society. This is like some Black Mirror shit. No, Killer Mike, what the fuck are you talking about? And how in this scenario, if we're talking about teen pregnancy, are the men boys and the women, the girls are women, and it's just, oh, well, the girls go to college, the women go to college. It's the boys that we have to try to figure out something to do with and solve the child support problem, solve this problem. The government does not have to solve the problem of people being unmarried. Things that are society's issue are poverty, the fucking environment, infrastructure, healthcare,
Healthcare is a biggie. My
civil
goodness.
rights. There is nothing in
Especially in a
his.
state like Georgia where he's from. Go ahead.
Yeah, these are the things that we as a society have to solve, not fucking 18-year-olds getting pregnant because somebody got knocked up. We do not need to legislate or by decree of executive order determine that teenagers should be fucking married because they have a child. So this is all incredibly stupid and unserious. And to say it with such conviction is even more fucking stupid. What I want to see is if we're going to tackle the root causes of teen pregnancy, then we need to be tackling things like access to birth control. How about that? Where you don't need a fucking judge to say, you know, my parents don't want me to have fucking birth control or whatever the situation may be. We need to be
That's
talking.
education.
We need to be talking about education. Absolutely. That's part of the Democrats' plan to make it easier for people to go get a trade. That's been part of every Democrat's fucking presidential platform, even when it was 20 of them running. Community college being cheaper, things of that nature. If we're going to talk about teen pregnancy and we're talking about Black girls, our community, then why aren't we talking about Black maternal health? That's not something that I heard in that equation. I mean, the idea that we need to be decreeing incentives for people who are not really even in a position in most cases to even be bringing a child into this world, but to now be bringing a child into this world and getting married is fucking ridiculous. Not to mention it would never happen. It would absolutely never happen. So why don't we talk about things like what the Biden-Harris administration did, which was cut Black child poverty in half with the child tax credit? Why don't we talk about expanding the earned income tax credit? Why don't we talk about the things like what Vice President Kamala Harris proposed when she was a presidential candidate and as a senator, which is the Rent Relief Act, which limits the amount of your discretionary income that goes to paying rent, and a number of things. These are the things that we as a society should be tackling, not what people are doing in their bedroom, and certainly not trying to tie people together with a legal document and a legal situation and make sure they live together, all that kind of shit. And all of that being said, if a motherfucker don't want to be there for his child, or a motherfucker doesn't want to be there for her child, because motherfucker is gender neutral, then there ain't no motherfucking policy in the world that's going to change that, okay? I'm not going to sit up there and even entertain the idea that child support is a problem when child support ain't really even a drop in the bucket for most of these people and what it takes to actually raise a child. So just shut the entire fuck up. I don't know why anybody takes this person seriously. I know that he's done some good things. You know, he's a businessman in the Atlanta community, cool, whatever. As a rapper, he's more intelligent than some of the others, but that does not mean that he is equipped or has the depth or even this the common fucking sense to be a person that weighs in on political matters.
I want to add that Brian Kemp, Georgia Governor Brian Kemp, one of, I guess, Killer Mike's BFFs. Sarcastic.
A very fine man, as Killer Mike said.
He really adores Brian Kemp. Brian Kemp is one of the governors who they have turned down federal money to feed low-income kids.
Yep.
This just happened last month in January. Turned down federal money to feed low-income kids. So in addition to that and everything you just said, I want to also add this. My mother and father were not married. My father was a damn good father. Did he make mistakes? Absolutely. And I am grateful they didn't get married. My father got married in his 40s. I know conservatives and Killer Mike may have thought he's destroying the black family for doing that. He got married to my stepmother in his 40s. My father was not ready to be married.
Yeah.
When he got my mother pregnant. He was not ready. That would have been ridiculous. That would have destroyed their lives and my life because neither one of them were ready.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So this idea, again, that marriage is going to make you a better dad or make you more accountable. That's a Jim Crow lie. It's dated. The data doesn't even back it up. My father still took care of me. I was raised by my mother and my father separately on different ends, different coasts, mind you.
Right.
And my father still showed up. And he didn't need marriage to make him a good father.
Mm-hmm.
And if there would have been a federal policy that he would have had to marry my mother or go to trade school, that's just, and mind you, my father grew up in a 2-parent household and still didn't get married when my mother got pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
Still didn't do it. Relationships are complicated and nuanced, and I don't want anybody to feel forced into marriage. That was a big mistake that maybe not our parents, but our grandparents made. That was a huge mistake. So I just think it's a ridiculous narrative, and the co-signing of it, the data doesn't back it up. Whether it's Ann Coulter or Killer Mike, you cannot marry yourself out of poverty. If you want an economic infrastructure for poverty, look at Dr. King and Bayard Rustin and A. Philip Randolph's Freedom Plan back in 1967, the Freedom Budget. Look at that. Look how they were calling for subsidies for small businesses to pay a higher wage. Dr. King said it is expensive to end poverty.
Yeah.
And just booing up and getting married. I mean, unless you want to trap women again, where again, you can barely serve on a federal jury, where you can't get a credit card, where you can't own property, unless we go into that. Unless you want to trap men. I mean, listen, I know a lot of gay men who got married because they felt trapped. Marriage is because you want to, because you make a commitment.
Yeah.
And again, I don't want to act like the 1950s or 40s or 30s or 1920s was some robust time for black people. Hell, do we want to go back to that? My grandfather saw people getting lynched in Virginia. I mean, it's just the romanticizing of once upon. I know there's an idea, we had more unity back then. If you look at the research, there was tension back then. There was feuding back then. A lot of black folks despised Dr. King. It wasn't just white folks who despised him.
Yeah, that's true.
There was confusion on how we're going to move forward. But we damn sure, just thinking of what black women went through back then, yeah.
Listen, I'm a proponent of marriage. I'm very happily married to the love of my life, and he is a spectacular father. He is a spectacular father, a spectacular husband. I don't think that a lot of people, I wouldn't say a majority of the people, have the kind of marriage and partner that I have, because there are people that they are married and their husbands or their spouse or whichever, because it's not just women or men, whatever, aren't as present as they need to be in terms of sharing the load of parenting, in terms of sharing the load of household duties and a number of things. And so I don't think that we need to get into the psychology and the relationships and the bedrooms of people just because at 18 somebody got knocked up, 19, whatever. That's not our business. What we need to do is we need to tackle the systemic things in our society to end poverty and to give people choice. We don't want a society where people are forced to make decisions about that it's going to impact the rest of their lives potentially because they're poor or because they got knocked up or because of any number of things. We want a society that is based upon giving people choice and opportunity. And that's not what he described.
Reese, you've talked about this, and I have plenty of my friends who are women and they are single. I mean, I don't have any data to back this up, but I highly doubt that single women, maybe I'm wrong, are churning down men because they have a college degree and the man doesn't.
Yeah, no.
I mean, is that happening?
No, I don't.
Those single women who are saying, "Oh, you don't have a college degree," because we keep hearing almost the shaming that black women are getting college degrees at higher rates.
Yeah,
that's the reason why they're single. I don't know if he was trying to say that, but the women that I know,
was the undertone.
Right, the women that I know, they're pretty open minded, and they're not going to shut down a brother because he don't have a college degree. I could be wrong. I could be wrong, but I know you have single friends. Have you heard this narrative?
Yeah,
Oh,
I
no,
don't.
girl, he didn't go to Yale. I ain't going to date him. I mean, I just don't know.
That's fucking ridiculous. Number one, I think that there's so many layers of stereotyping and trying to black women shame, and I think that it's stupid. It's really stupid because a lot of it. I mean, look at Kevin Samuels, rest in peace. His whole thing was humbling black women. You guys think that you're more of a catch than you are because there are a dozen of you women with college degrees and who make six figures, and there's only so many black men that are the creme de la creme, and so you all have to, you all have to date this crop of men. Well, black women are already doing that. You know what I'm saying? So the whole notion that this is a problem that has to be solved and that black women have to just expand their horizons and da 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 is stupid because that's what black women are already doing. But I just think it's fascinating how in that scenario, black women's needs were completely dismissed. It was like there's no incentive for, well, how about when a teenage girl gets pregnant, helping her stay in college? It's just, well, they're going to college. How about helping her with her health care? It's just like black women already taken care of. Let's worry about the boys. There's so much sexism in this. It's actually nauseating to hear. But I can tell you one thing: the black community's problems are not rooted in black women being too picky. They're not rooted in black women taking the father of their child to court to get child support. And they're not rooted in black women not staying in a relationship that does not serve her or her children just for the sake of saying, I'm married to my child's father. Those things are not the root causes of what is plaguing, if we want to put it that way, the black community. Those are not root causes that need to be solved through executive action or through congressional action. Again, the root causes are things like poverty, food deserts, let's throw that in there, education being inadequate, over policing, being in these fucked up climate, strips where lead, water, radiation, a number of things. Come on. We can keep going on and on and on. These are systemic issues. Healthcare. Thank you. All of these things are the things that are weighing down on our communities. Not black women getting knocked up as teenagers, being too fucking picky to marry their baby daddy and taking their baby daddy child to fucking court for child support. So you are unserious if this is your big master plan. And like you said, maybe there was something else in there that they were talking about. Maybe this was a very extensive discussion, and maybe black women actually the problems that we deal with, like the pay gap, where we making, what is it now, 60-something cents on the dollar of a white man. Maybe that came up eventually. Black maternal health, maybe that came up eventually. But you're unfucking serious if the premise of the things that we need to fix or any of the things that I just mentioned when it came to black women and who they're opening up their legs to and who they're fucking marrying, because that ain't it. And to say all this shit in front of a white man is even more ridiculous and offensive.
Also, I want to add, when it comes to college, I was a college dropout. I went to college for one semester at Penn State, dropped out. Penn State University in Philadelphia. Then I went to Community College of Philadelphia, dropped out. I didn't go back to school until I was 24 years old. Rutgers University. Life is complicated.
Yeah.
Complicated. I wasn't ready for school. I wasn't ready for it. Can you imagine if I would have got somebody, I had girlfriends back then, if I would have got somebody pregnant and would have been forced into trade school? Could you imagine what my life? Could you imagine
fuck that? The bestsellers list. You're going to be, go get you a trade. Come on.
That's some Booker T. Washington shit.
No,
like,
this
I'm going to force you into.
Like, this sounds like Friday. You gonna work, you gonna go to school, you gonna get a trade.
Right.